The mansion in Montenegro stood like a fortress of glass and concrete in an exclusive gated community, where silence was the most expensive luxury. High walls, crowned by discreet electric fences and automated iron gates, ensured that the outside world remained exactly where it should be, far away. Inside, the air was thin, air-conditioned, and permeated by an unusual quiet for a house with a 2-year-old child. Everything was too organized, too clean, too controlled. From the first glance, it was evident that this house operated under invisible, yet unbreakable, rules. Before we continue this story, I ask that you subscribe to the channel and leave a like, so that this video reaches more people who, like you, appreciate a good story. When Anna, the new au pair, arrived, the taxi was met with a silence that seemed more like an inspection than a warm welcome. She was greeted with impeccable politeness, bordering on artificiality. Helena Montenegro, her mother, spoke with a rehearsed sweetness. Her gestures fluid yet rhythmic, like a ballerina performing a familiar choreography. Her designer dress was immaculate, without a single crease. Ricardo, her father, greeted her with calculated firmness, his handshake firm but brief, his eyes scanning her from head to toe in a single quick movement. Neither of them seemed nervous, but both observed her with excessive attention, as if every detail from her worn travel jeans to the simple way she tied her hair in a ponytail was being recorded, analyzed, and filed away. "Welcome, Anna. We hope you enjoyed your trip. We hope you feel at home," said Helena, with a perfect, radiant smile that didn't reach her cold, assessing eyes. On that first day, they sat at the imposing marble island in the kitchen for a conversation they called an important alignment. The room was a testament to minimalist opulence, all gleaming stainless steel and austere white surfaces. They spoke of the former nanny, a young woman named Sophia, who, they said, mistreated little Clara. They spoke of trauma, guilt, and sleepless nights. Their voices a carefully modulated mixture of sadness and determination. They described scenes of neglect with a chilling precision that seemed more rehearsed than genuinely remembered. "It was a terrible time," Helena confided, placing a delicate hand on her chest as if trying to ease a deep pain. "Finding her crying alone in her crib, terrified, it's an image no parent should have to endure. We were devastated. We blame ourselves, of course. That's why," Ricardo continued, shifting his tone to one of firm paternal protection, "we installed cameras in several common areas. It's a purely security measure to ensure Clara's safety. And yours too, of course. Think of it as a digital safety net. A peace of mind measure for all of us." He gestured vaguely, as if the cameras were benevolent, invisible guardians. Clara appeared soon after, led by the hand of a uniformed governess, whose face was an expressionless, professional mask. She was a small child, with restrained, almost hesitant movements, and large, attentive eyes that seemed to understand far more than her age suggested. She neither ran nor smiled. She simply stood still, observing Anna with disconcerting seriousness. This quiet and fragile image powerfully reinforced her parents' justification. Anna felt an immediate and overwhelming wave of empathy. Nothing seemed more understandable, more necessary, than protecting that child from any further harm. The au pair's room was at the end of a long, sterile hallway on the second floor. A hallway so white and silent it resembled a passageway in a modern art gallery. The room itself was comfortable, furnished with minimalist design pieces, but completely impersonal. There were no photos, books, or scattered objects to suggest that a life unfolded there. It was a guest room, not a bedroom. On the hallway ceiling, a small dark dome betrayed the presence of a camera, positioned to monitor any movement entering or leaving the rooms. Nothing was said about it. It was expected to be accepted as part of the furniture, just another silent feature of the house. That first night, as the house plunged into absolute silence, almost a hum, the feeling in the air wasn't one of fear, but of a constant, discreet alert. Anna lay in bed, listening to the faint hum of the central air conditioning system, feeling the weight of the silence. She didn't know it yet, but from the moment she stepped through that gate, she was no longer just an employee. She had become a variable in a rigidly controlled equation. The following days passed with the precision of a Swiss watch. Waking up at 7 a.m. Breakfast with Clara at 8 a.m., a nutritionally balanced meal planned weeks in advance. Structured play activities from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Everything was governed by a printed schedule, left on the kitchen counter every morning. There was no room for improvisation. Clara slept for long periods, cried very little, and observed everything around her with a silent and unsettling attention that intrigued and worried Anna. She seemed like a spectator of her own childhood. The cameras began to reveal themselves gradually, like shy actors entering the scene. They were in the kitchen, angled towards the work areas, in the hallway, in the living room, overlooking the sofas, in the backyard, covering the patio. Always discreet, always positioned for the widest possible angle. Curiously, Anna noticed that none of them focused directly on Clara's crib or her activity mat. The focus seemed to be elsewhere. The circulation areas, the entrances, the exits, the places where the adults moved around. The Montenegros seemed to possess an almost psychic knowledge of her day. They commented on small details, even on unmentioned matters. "You seemed a little tired this afternoon, Anna. Are you sleeping well?" Helena asked once, her voice heavy with concern. Anna merely suppressed a yawn for a second in the kitchen, believing she was alone. The questions always came naturally, but the unsettling precision of their observations began to feel like an invasion of privacy. One night, feeling a sharp pang of homesickness, Anna went to the garden to call her family. She walked to the back, near a dense hedge, hoping to find some privacy. She spoke softly, sharing her first impressions of the house and her concern about the child's strange silence. The next morning, during breakfast, Helena casually commented, "Your mother must be missing you terribly. You're very attached to her, aren't you?" Anna forced a tense smile, a cold dread running down her spine. She hadn't told anyone in the house about the call. As time passed, the constant feeling of being watched intensified, infiltrating even the moments when she was alone in her room. Every gesture seemed evaluated. Every silence seemed interpreted. The house wasn't explicitly hostile, but its atmosphere was suffocating. It was then that Anna's perception fundamentally changed. The cameras weren't there just to record events. They were there to anticipate behaviors, analyze, and ensure absolute control. Something began to deeply trouble her: the lack of information surrounding Sophia, the former nanny. Her name was never mentioned. Not as a warning, not as a lament. It was as if the woman whose supposed failure justified all that surveillance had been erased from the house's history. Driven by a persistent curiosity, Anna casually asked Helena about her one afternoon while Clara was napping. "I was just wondering, what exactly happened to Sophia? Was she prosecuted, or?" The reaction was instantaneous. Helena's rehearsed smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Her gaze hardened. "It wasn't necessary. We reached a private agreement. It was better for everyone this way." The answer came out short, definitive, like a steel door slamming shut. No further details, just a heavy silence that ended the subject. From that day on, Anna began to observe her surroundings with a new purpose. She was no longer just an employee. She was an investigator. She searched for signs, traces, anything that indicated the hidden life of another person within those walls. In the laundry room, a damp and forgotten space in the basement, rarely frequented by her employers, she found it hidden behind a pile of expired cleaning products was an old hardcover notebook. It contained only a few filled pages, the handwriting small and neat. There were dates, account numbers, initials, and disjointed notes about delivery schedules and names of companies Anna had never heard of: Logistics v. Transglobal Holdings. It wasn't a diary, it was a ledger. A meticulous, almost forensic record. On the last page, a single sentence, hastily scribbled, jumped out at her. Asterisk, asterisk, they don't protect the girl, they protect the house. Asterisk asterisk, Anna's heart pounded against her ribs as she tucked the notebook under her blouse. This wasn't irrelevant. It was a clue. Someone before her had seen something they shouldn't have. Sophia hadn't been negligent. She had been curious, and her curiosity had clearly cost her dearly. The atmosphere in the house began to subtly shift, or perhaps it was Anna who was now attuned to its true frequency. Conversations between Ricardo and Helena ceased abruptly whenever she entered a room. Their gazes became more attentive, lingering a second longer. The mansion, once merely controlled, now seemed to be holding its breath. The family's first mistake was underestimating Anna's perception. They believed that her role as an employee made her invisible, a functional piece of furniture. They were confident that their cameras would be enough to keep her intimidated and passive. They were wrong. One night, as she walked to her room, Anna heard voices coming from Ricardo's office. The heavy door was ajar. She froze, leaning against the cold wall. She heard snippets of a heated discussion, large sums of money, names of offshore companies, references to tax havens and remittances that needed to be cleaned. None of it matched the public image of Ricardo Montenegro, the respected investment consultant. As she leaned forward, a floorboard creaked beneath her foot. The sound was tiny, but in the sepulchral silence of the house, it sounded like a gunshot. The voices inside the office ceased instantly. A dense, predatory silence followed. Anna retreated into the shadows of the hallway, her blood running cold. The next day, her employer's behavior was noticeably different, more rigid, more formal. They were assessing a new risk. The risk was her. It was on that same day that a nervous, inexperienced cleaning lady accidentally left the office door unlocked after tidying up. A folder had been left on the corner of the desk. Anna, passing by, glanced at it. Her eyes caught letterhead, contracts, financial reports. Fraudulent contracts, duplicate reports for different tax authorities. Records of massive donations to non-existent foundations. It was a clear and undeniable plan for a large-scale money laundering operation, run from the sterile comfort of her own home. Everything fell into place with terrifying clarity. The former nanny, Sophia, hadn't been aggressive. She had discovered this, and when she realized the danger she was in, she fled or was forced to flee. The cameras weren't protecting the child. They were protecting the Montenegro family's secrets. A sharp, paralyzing fear overwhelmed her. Her first instinct was to run, but she quickly suppressed it. Running away now would be predictable, and whoever expects an escape prepares for it. She would become the next problem babysitter who simply disappears. The young woman made a decision. She would act as if she hadn't discovered anything. She continued smiling, keeping to the schedule, performing her duties with a placid, robotic perfection. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, she was a strategist planning a war. She began studying the camera angles, mapping the blind spots in the house. She learned the routine with military precision. She discovered that the camera system had a local backup that was overwritten every 48 hours, and that Ricardo remotely accessed the live feed every night around 11 p.m. Innocent comments and subtle questions became her weapons. "Wow, Dr. Ricardo works so hard, so late into the night, doesn't he?" she would say to Helena. "He's very dedicated," the woman would reply, oblivious to the trap. Confident in the control they believed they had, they spoke more than they should, unwittingly handing her the pieces of the puzzle. Anna began to record everything. Using the Wi-Fi dead-end spot in the farthest corner of the garden, she used her cell phone to photograph documents, record snippets of conversations, and take detailed notes. Each piece of information was sent to an encrypted and anonymous email account. She wasn't just planning an escape, she was planning to dismantle their entire world. As the weeks passed, the family's behavior became increasingly erratic. Ricardo grew more distant, his gaze cold and calculating. Helena, on the other hand, became excessively attentive, almost maternal in a sinister way. She brought Anna tea, asked about her family, her fears, her plans for the future. These were interrogations disguised as kindness, designed to probe her weaknesses. It became frighteningly clear that they were assessing the risk she posed. Just like they did with Sophia, they didn't fire employees who became problematic. They removed them, permanently and discreetly. The tension grew each day, making the air in the house almost unbreathable. Anna slept in short, restless naps, always on alert. Any mistake, any crack in her facade could be fatal. Still, she continued gathering evidence, now with frantic urgency. She knew her time was running out. Little Clara remained her only point of emotional vulnerability, the only innocent soul in this web of lies. Caring for her was what kept her sane, a small island of genuine warmth in an ocean of cold calculation. On her last night, Anna prepared the child for sleep with tender and touching care. She hummed a lullaby, her voice soft, feeling a lump forming in her throat. The gesture was slow, silent, laden with a farewell the girl could never comprehend. After the house fell silent, she walked through the rooms one last time, a ghost in her computer, aware of every camera, every shadow. Her plan was underway. The last files had been sent. The digital traces on her phone had been erased. Nothing was left to chance. When she left, there were no suitcases, no notes, no dramatic farewells. Just the front gate, ajar. A silent departure exactly as the house had always demanded. Hours later, from a safe and anonymous location on the other side of town, she sent a single message to a contact at an investigative newspaper she had researched. The message was short and impossible to ignore. Asterisk, asterisk, the Montenegro family. They are not alone at home. And now you know what it's like to live under surveillance. Asterisk asterisk attached was the key to the entire dossier. Days later, the authorities knocked on the mansion's door. There was no show, no sirens, no drama. Just the silent and methodical precision of the law. Search and seizure warrants, accounting experts. Dates, values, recordings, patterns, everything the Montenegro family thought was safe within their walls and under the watchful eye of their cameras was now exposed. The cameras, ironically, saved no one. In fact, access to the old recordings, obtained legally, helped corroborate all the evidence provided by Anna Clara, was carefully removed from her home by a social worker. The news brought a bittersweet peace to Anna, who watched everything on television on the other side of the world. The family lost control, its image, and its freedom. Their empire crumbled silently, just as it had been built in the shadows. Anna moved forward with invisible scars, but with a newfound strength she never imagined she possessed. She had learned the hard way that control is not power. And sometimes the person who seems to be the most observed is already way ahead in the game. The story of the au pair at the Montenegro mansion is more than a suspenseful tale full of secrets and surveillance. It's a profound reflection on the dynamics of power and the illusory nature of control. The narrative shows us that true prisons are not made of high walls or security cameras, but of silence, fear, and passive acceptance of authority. The family, in their obsessive pursuit of control, became prisoners of their own fortress, blinded by the arrogance that technology and money could subdue the human spirit. Anna's journey demonstrates that perception is the most powerful weapon against oppression. She transforms what should be a tool of intimidation, the cameras in, to a map for her strategy. Her strength lies not in overt rebellion, but in silent intelligence, in the ability to observe those who observe her and to use the system's own logic against it. The true protagonist is not just the young woman who solves a crime, but the resilience of the human spirit that flourishes under pressure. In the end, the family's downfall is not a spectacular event, but a silent collapse, reflecting the oppressive quietude they themselves imposed. The story leaves us with an uncomfortable truth. In a world where we are constantly watched, true power does not reside in who holds the camera, but in who understands the game. And sometimes the person who seems most vulnerable and watched is, in fact, many steps ahead, proving that freedom is not the absence of surveillance, but the courage to think and act despite it. That was an intense story, and now I want to know your opinion. Asterisk asterisk, what detail do you think was crucial to the success of Anna's plan? Let's discuss it in the comments. Asterisk asterisk, and if you want to be part of a community that loves to unravel good mysteries, asterisk asterisk, click the sign up button. Your presence makes all the difference.